Very, very nice.
We know, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot.
but, yeah, I mean, they're not done
I
yet.
forgot to bring
Over
the
to shut up now, or?
Yes, yes, where the,
I
it
gotta
goes back
resolder
in,
all
makes it, you know.
Stretch.
Yeah, he got that wrinkle out pretty good.
He missed a spot though, dude. Seriously,
Well, that spot, right there, I don't know what that is. That's underneath. It's not even the carpet.
it's missing padding.
I gotta
That's
get
what it is.
I gotta get a deeper
Oh,
box,
the rest of it's good.
because that,
I mean,
It looks good.
shut off valve is so
the
far
holes
down.
all lined up and
I
I
wanted to
mean,
turn
you'll
it
have a
off a
little
little
bit.
bit, but Albert told me the pipes are old.
This
on the street. So when you try to turn off the main valve, it's still.
Can you get some small rocks that?
I did that.
Okay.
We did that, but if I could find maybe a longer box, it might be better. I don't know, I have to look at it and stuff.
It's just like whole seam right here. He missed. You can feel it all the way up.
Because when it was leaking, I was mad. that when-
Well, right here. He's just
Shut
kind of.
off valve, and they
Is
dig
that
it
gonna bug
Well,
you?
didn't it read you
out.
the,
Dig out.
Oh, it's like rolled.
So I did, so we did dig around it and then.
But I do know-
Gravel, and I put gravel around it. But it's
Well,
not.
I didn't expect him to get that wrinkle out as good as he
I
did.
mean,
Well,
it's
it
super
looks
expensive,
great.
but,
There's just a couple padding spots. He
or
should have.
maybe even if I just get a couple bricks to put down first down there and then set that box on it. Easier. I think I have a couple, there should be some bricks, like
For sure. You're.
a brick like 2 inches.
Iron this.
Like,
How much rock you already got built up?
not much. So it's at least, that's the. have to use it. Why it's so deep.
Well, the main line is probably.
Problem.
That's about
So,
where it tees off and goes to these sprinklers, right?
so the only question I have for you, Nick and Rob. Somebody did put a faucet out there, but there's no need for a faucet out there, right? A faucet right here. Somebody on the valves that put a faucet out here. We were like, you went, I never used it. I mean, I guess if you're the water. Yeah, it was, yeah.
Not the one for the fills like that, right?
No. It was out in the corner. Like, so like, where the shut off valve was, it went all the way over to here with the valve. And then over there on the corner, somebody just put a hose bit. I cut it off now. I can still put one on. I didn't.
Yeah, it was like PVC line.
Yeah,
I mean, so accidentally tap it.
Don't we have a faucet?
yeah, right here, yeah.
I mean, that's-
Okay. I just wanna, I didn't wanna make it bad.
I've never seen it used.
Fill water balloons up there.
Yeah.
No, at least you're thinking.
We haven't had water balloons.
And then I reduced it from the 1 inch down to 3/4. I want to get some valves. See if I can get 1 inch pipe going.
For how many, well, you moved the sprinkler valve over there.
Yeah, instead of way over here, remember I was telling you, we just had to run the wire, but I thought it made more sense to have the valves not sticking out in the open.
Yeah, it became a weird spot.
Yeah, when we said back in the day, it was a weird spot.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I didn't see the lights outside.
Lights and great lights.
I didn't notice it because it was 5 different door stops out there.
We actually have more in the closet. Was it going against the wall?
I had it.
Turn around.
The wind was clear up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Saturday. I get no. Saturday, I was ran down, came back here, so I stayed home with Jamie and her. And then, Sunday, we went, and then,
Nick, I put the rock, small rock,
no, I didn't, but it was
like concerned about having the hook. And somebody maybe like grab the door and try to pull it closed. Pull the hook.
Oh, that's good. So like, it takes me a day.
Next time, take our house.
Well, Saturday, I think.
Yeah. If it gets yanked go hard. If it gets yanked go hard.
It's very easy.
It's one thing I've turned that way.
But other than that, you're good. If it goes back tomorrow.
Like, just stop thinking, just walking outside the doors and open and you grab it and make it.
Or if the wind gusts good enough, it might be. I've seen the wind move the other big boulder that we have out there. Just behind that door and tips that rock.
So I tried to call.
I look for big door width stuff. I can't find it behind. You got like a gap in the door sometimes.
Did he come out and fix the carpet? Come out pretty good.
Yeah. It did.
So how long?
Yeah, got the whole. James, how much carpet did you trim?
Like 2 to 3 inches off everything.
So I would have done that.
I think we're gonna put it better.
Use a stretcher and stuff. You can use a stretcher.
They're about $400.
I mean, nothing was lined up.
That's fine.
What your stretchers? Derek
Yeah.
just said a few $100.
Oh, yeah, it was worth it.
And then Sunday was the
Stretcher, yeah, they're like, I was looking at them on Amazon.
I think James.
And so it was a trick, because
Do it.
Like
I was saying, it was the kicker, it was a stretcher. I guess I never paid attention.
Yeah, he didn't use the kicker once.
Huh?
He didn't use the kicker once.
So it's just, it's stretch, like it goes down and it's.
So it has like 2 prongs. that take on the side and then once you take on the other.
Huh. He said the kicker, you only use the kicker. The first line.
That's the downside.
So he's able to stretch it and he puts the stretcher in a certain spot. And it won't I guess, huh?
He was worried about that, and he spent like
Oh,
the majority of the time in this corner trying to stretch it out, and the holes too much.
He says.
Or no, let's just cut a slit in some spray.
Huh?
Maybe it's just like. I'm kidding.
We got Hagen here.
Or flat.
Oh, I guess we can.
No, I don't want to.
Your mom's not here, so I guess it falls on seas, so. Maybe you don't have to worry about it.
All right, we can get started. It's 7:05, so. Gonna wait for Sharon to get in here. Let's go ahead and all stand. Start off with the word of prayer. Albert, will you lead us in prayer, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here today. Help us be a good example to those that are lost, that need it. Watch over this country and the things that are going on in this world. Watch over us as we hear a portion of the word that our pastor brings forth. Help him to say the words that are on his heart, that he helps us all to live a good life in your eyes, Lord. Forgive us where we fail you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So just real quickly, just by way of announcement, just to get these out of the way. It's a cleaning week, Team 2's turn. And so that is that. And work day next week, next Saturday, right? That was the plan. That's what we said, right? March 5th. But yeah, we'll figure out what we got to get done, because the idea is to have 2 more work days, right, Eric? Like one where we plant the stuff, which will be a little bit lighter, and then one where we're moving gravel around, which would be a heavy work day and needing a lot of manpower for that. So that's it for announcements. Prayer request wise, we appreciate everybody's prayers for Caden, and we had a rough night Sunday night, and it's one of those weird things, where we thought there was food in this. He knew there was the whole time. He was always right, and but then we're trying to figure out, could it be like something that got messed up? Because I've had food kind of slowly go down my esophagus, but the idea of food getting stuck there is just something I'd never even heard of. And but it was about 14 hours. He had that hot dog stuck in his chest, and the doctor went in, and the problem is, it wasn't the bite of hot dog, it was his esophagus. And he had that condition Caden has where he has a lot of issues with his stomach and esophagus, and his esophagus had swollen almost shut. It was like just a really small pinch at one point, and just wasn't big enough to let solid food pass through, or at least something like a hot dog. So they had to go in and dig it all out, and they had to take out piece by piece because it was wedged in there really good. But it was a long night. But and I was saying this to Dave, Dave's process where things didn't work out as quickly as we would have liked, and I'm sure as fast as he would have liked, but sometimes it doesn't happen quickly, but all of it is part of God's plan to get you in the right hands. And that's kind of what our prayer has been for his situation, Dave's situation, but that was definitely the case in Caden's. The doctor was incredible, and he was, that's what he does. He does exactly what Caden's doctor does. And so everything he went in and did, he was able to, make reports and get that forwarded to Caden's doctor. And we're hoping, the hope is that this be the beginning of maybe finding out all that's going into causing this. And it's been really hard to identify what food group has caused this. We know tree nuts, but there's something else. And so a biopsy was taken while he was in there. And we're hopeful that God can bring some good out of this horrible night. And that's the idea. It's just a really rough night, but if good comes from it, then it'll be well worth it. And of course, we just give it to God. And all this, we just know that God has Cain's best interests at heart, and he cares about it. And so we're praying for him to kind of help us figure out the next step in all this. That's the thing. Now it's the beginning of a whole new cycle. We've been here years ago, and you were here again 6 months ago, and now here we are again. But hopefully this time we can get down to getting more answers, so we can get past this, and he can go on to be get healthy and get over this. So keep him in your prayers. He's really sore, and obviously he still can't eat really solid foods because we're not really sure how tight his esophagus is. We don't want to have to end up back in the ER again. So just keep him in your prayers. And then mentioning Dave, he's going in tomorrow. They're going to take the staples out. So the padding on top of his head is there to protect it, but it's stapled down. And so they're going to have that taken off tomorrow, and then hopefully we get the results of some of the tests that were done on it. And he's got a lot more to this process. He's going to have to get some more work done, obviously, to fix the area that they took all the skin. So keep him in your prayers. He mentioned that one of the hard things is, I mean, I'm sure Albert and Tracy saw him, they could probably attest to this. The hard thing for him is staying down and just resting, because they're supposed to not do anything. And so, we'll just keep praying for his recovery, pray that he stays down and recovers like he's supposed to. And of course, the doctor's appointment tomorrow. Any other prayer requests? Yeah, Treva.
She did get her surgery dates on March 18th. She
Okay.
said, as odd as it is, that was when she got her first skin cancer removed 8 years ago, March 18th.
On the same day?
Yeah, so she'll be going there. They say it's pretty invasive, it's gonna be an in and out, and then she'll do radiation at this point, as long as nothing will spread, so.
Okay. Yeah, so they did decide what route they're gonna go. Okay. Well, let's pray for her. And March 18th is the date, the surgery date. So let's be in prayer for Melody, and everything goes well. We get another situation where I'm sure she would like for it to happen quicker, but we just give it to God, and hopefully God will get her through it. Anybody else? Yeah, Sharon.
Again, all I can say is thank you, church. I've already had 4 clients. I'll have a 5th one tomorrow. And Lord's just watching over me. This freeway still, it's just there. Cars and
In the rain?
trucks and- Oh, that was miserable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I made it.
Okay,
By His grace.
let's keep praying for Sharon, and that she's getting back into the swing of things and getting more clients and getting on the road again, and her health and psychologically, just that God just keep her strong through all this as she's getting back to some normal routines. Anybody else? All right. I don't see anybody looking like they have anything to say, so let's go ahead and open our Bibles to the book of James. One of the number one rules of this is one of the first rules you get when you become a preacher, but I always give it to any man that's giving devotionals, never make excuses, never shine a light on your flaws or whatever, because then people are looking for it. Or if you do something, if you have bad habits in front of people, don't point them out, because then that's all they're going to see. A little bit scatterbrained this week, and I think my whole family is. We're just not quite up to snuff yet. Really long few days, and just kind of just a lot on our hearts. I guess, even beyond Caden's health, pray for our family. We have so much just burden on our hearts for our kids, me and Stephanie, and we're just so concerned for them. We're concerned for all the kids here. They're all facing so much, and so much going on in the world, so much working against our kids. And then when there's health issues on top of it, it's just a lot. And so I'm not bad. I'm just not, I haven't been myself the last few days. And I think that's okay. I'm not beating myself up. I mean, I'm a concerned father. Of course I'm not right. Of course I'm burdened. Of course, I've got a lot weighing down on my heart and my mind, and just consuming, right? You can't go to sleep at night, and you're just trying to do right. You want to do good by your kids, and you want God to help. And so, we're in the thick of it. We've been in the thick of it. We're even more, it's like more in the thick of it, just all the things going on. The good thing is, as I shared a couple of weeks ago, I think, as I was asking a prayer request for my family, just a lot going on. But the good thing is, I mean, there's problems people face that we're not, that are even more severe. And that is, again, spiritually, I think we're all okay. I don't want to say good, because we all are working to grow and get better spiritually, but I don't think we're spiritually suffering. And certainly as far as the relationships in my household, I just couldn't imagine it being better, and I'm sure it could be, but I mean, the kids are great. Their attitudes are great. My marriage is great. So those aren't the things, and those things I don't even know. Me and Stephanie were saying, could you imagine if we were in one of those lulls in marriage where sometimes you're butting heads and you're not seeing eye to eye on everything, and emotionally and physically and spiritually in every way, we're good. So what would it be like if we weren't right now? And so I'm saying that because I don't want you to worry about the wrong things or those types of things, but just as far as other things going on in the house, we just pray for us. And then, I've a very important calling to get up here every service and to never waste your time. And I can't ever explain. If you've never been a pastor, you can't understand how hard. You can only imagine, right? But I have weeks like you have weeks, and I have to stand up here. I can't ask someone to take my devotional. And if I needed, I would ask for some time off. And I don't think I do, but I might, and I will if I need it. But again, you got all the things going on, work, and I got to go to work. It's so dumb, work things, emails and texts, and I got to meet someone in Palm Springs tomorrow. It's like the stupidest stuff. I don't want to worry about that right now, but I have to. And then you're scatterbrained, and you don't feel like I just don't feel like I have anything for you tonight. And so whatever I have, I'm just asking for God to use it. Just some simple thoughts from James, and bear with me. I think I should be fine. I don't feel like I'm that scatterbrained. Sometimes I feel like I can't connect words together, and we've all been there. But more than anything, it's just my heart, my thoughts are just burdened. I'm way down, and when you're in that state, it's kind of like, what do you talk about? What in the whole Bible, which we have all these topics? What do I feel like I'm capable of talking about? And so we're just going to look at some verses in James. Actually, let's introduce it, and then it's going to take a minute to get to the passage I want to get to. Let's read a verse in James 1. James 1, verse 5. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him, which is true of all things that we need. It's just where there's a good godly desire, and when we desire godly things, God is able and willing to provide above and beyond what we need. What we lack, God makes up, and that goes in every category, right? I mean, if I'm not great, if I'm as pastor not 100% here, which a pastor has to be, right? But I'm trying. That if I'm not, God makes up, and God makes up wherever I lack. And I'm human, so I lack a lot, and I lack, regularly. But God makes up. But in life, as we go through hardships, when we're weak and when we feel exhausted, and you don't even know, it's just hard doing the normal things of life. Picking out dinner, cooking dinner, getting things done around the house. Those things become difficult. God helps, God makes up. But in this specific area, wisdom is something we all want, understanding. And wisdom can be a very general topic, and we're going to present it tonight as a very general thing. It can be specific too, we're seeking God's answers and wisdom and on decisions in our life, like which way do we go with this decision? And buying a car is even something as mundane as that is, and it still is an important decision financially. And so I think that we should always be looking to God to help us make decisions and to give us wisdom and understanding to all of life's decisions, dating, marriage, house buying, car buying, in general, life's decisions. God gives us answers. God leads us in those. But generally speaking, I think we can all acknowledge that we lack, complete understanding, and where there is a lack of wisdom, that is something that we're told and instructed. And the thing about James is the entire book of James, this entire epistle, is just filled with wisdom. And yet it's mentioned only in two places, here and in another place. But as James is acknowledging, if you lack wisdom, ask God. And where there is a lack, maybe you have a general sense of wisdom, but where you lack insight or understanding, ask of God. But if you lack it, ask God for it. And he gives generously, and he gives without reproach. And so God is willing to give it. Wisdom is something that we all desire. Solomon is probably one of the greatest examples, probably the best when you think about wisdom. You think about Solomon, a lot to speak on this topic with him. But we know that when he became king, he felt overwhelmed. It's an important thing to be a king of a people. We all have things in life that is in conjunction with our service to God. These are important things. We're over the house of God, overseeing the house of God. It's an important thing for us to keep in mind, and overseeing his things. And Solomon was a little bit overwhelmed, probably felt a little like the job was bigger than him. And that's okay to feel that way, because we have a God that's even bigger than the job. And so Solomon was asked by God, what do you want? And Solomon, in his this vision that he had with God, as he stood before God in this vision, as he was asked for anything, Solomon could have asked for a long life. He could have asked for wealth. He could have asked for a lot of things. He didn't ask for selfish things. It was a very humble thing that he asked for. We see a really important aspect of wisdom in the way he pursued it, and how we're taught to pursue it. It's not in arrogance. It's not with me in mind. We want to grow. We want understanding, but when we seek our own, this is not the wisdom that God blesses. This isn't the desire that God blesses with his wisdom. And we'll see what James says about that in just a minute. But Solomon, in humility, understood that he was asked a great thing. To lead God's people was a daunting task. It was a great task. And he didn't know what he was doing. And so he asked God, give me wisdom to do this job that you've called me to do. And God, of course, because he asked such a great thing, because again, he wasn't seeking his own, he was concerned about his people, the people of Israel, God's people. He didn't put himself first, he put the people of God first. And because of that desire, God gave him wisdom, known as the wisest man that ever lived. That's why he wrote all these wise sayings and proverbs, and a lot of wisdom comes out of Ecclesiastes. He writes all these things because he asked God for wisdom. He asked God, like we're told to, if you lack wisdom, ask God, he'll give it. And he had a lot to say on this topic of wisdom. And the point I was going to make is, because he asked for wisdom, which was a selfless thing and a good thing, God gave him a long life. He gave him health. He gave him wealth. And he was also known as perhaps the wealthiest man that ever lived, as far as just in comparison, I guess, at the time, in comparison to others. But he says a lot of things about wisdom. As he starts to write the book of Proverbs, he says this about wisdom. I'm just going to read it real quickly. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the wise words of the wise, the words of the wise and the riddles. As he says all these things, of course, points out that wisdom is something that a wise man pursues. You have wisdom, but there's no idea, it doesn't give off the idea that it's something that you just apprehend and have. Wisdom is something you can lose. There's a point when Solomon talked about all the things that he had done with his life, and he said, yeah, I attained my wisdom. That idea is he hadn't fallen from grace and fallen from God, the one who gave it. So he continued to grow in wisdom. But wisdom, if you're a wise individual, you pursue knowledge and understanding of things. It's something that a wise person desires and understands that he lacks. And so he continues to increase and gain and learn. And so in conjunction with us and our relationship with God, we've received a lot. We have a lot of blessings. We have a lot of understanding here. But as we're constantly encouraged in the Word of God that there's still more to apprehend, there's more to gain, there's more to grow in. And if we have wisdom, which I believe we have a baseline, a strong sense of like understanding, we have wisdom here, but there is more to gain. And so we need to be a people who are constantly pursuing knowledge and understanding, especially, right? We're talking about the things of God. There's a lot of things out in the world I'll never know. We got to kind of just trust, I guess, the science and scientists in some areas. But as far as the things of God, we need to continue to grow in wisdom and how to conduct our life, conduct it, not just any which way. We're going to talk about this when we get back to James, but conduct it in a godly way. The world has a sense of wisdom, but it's different than God's wisdom. It's selfish, it's proud, it's self-seeking. That's the wisdom of the world, how to gain and grow again their self and their life in this flesh. But the type of wisdom that God wants us to grow in and to increase in is his type of wisdom, which is humble and gentle and meek. The fear of the Lord. So where does wisdom begin? Okay, first off, the beginning of fear, beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And so we want to be a people who fear God, and from that, put on and start to grow and learn the things of God. And it comes from fearing and recognition of ourselves, recognition that God has the answers, we do not. And from that place of fear and understanding our place compared to God, we are now in the right state of mind for God to lead us and help us grow. And so to get back to James chapter 3, get back to James, we'll turn to chapter 3. And we're going to look through just 6 verses. And again, I don't know. I don't know. But we'll, well, it's already 7:30, so I guess it can't be too bad as far as finishing way early, but we're going to move through these verses and just talk about some things here, some frame of mind and how to, what type of mindset we are to put on as God's people, and as opposed to the way the world puts on their type of thinking. Verse 13, who among you is wise? Who among you is wise and understanding? The question of who is wise. I think that's an interesting question first, because who doesn't think they're wise? Everybody is wise in their own, way of thinking. Everyone thinks they have great understanding. So who is wise? And some of the people I've found in my life, this is kind of a struggle for me, but some of the people that I've found that think they're wise, like some of the people that probably carry themselves or try to act wisest, are some of the foolish people I know. So, so thinking you're wise is not the idea here. That's kind of probably more along the lines of the way the world works. It's not of God, it's of our flesh. It's carnal, the way that when we try to think ourselves wise, although I guess Solomon probably knew he was wise, but wisdom is something that there's evidence of. And I guess that's the point I want to make. Who is wise? Everyone thinks they're wise, but we know a tree by its fruits, and that goes by way of those the hypocrites of the world, the false prophets. But that also is true of the wise. Someone, if their advice or thinking gets them into trouble, they're not wise. It doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means, again, it means they're not wise. And wisdom is something. It's not always a matter of intellect. It's not a matter of your IQ. Wisdom is something you can put on if you humble yourself in fear of God and you seek understanding from God. He'll give us insight. He'll give us understanding in how to conduct our life and how to go about things in a wise way. We're going to see this in a second. It's from a place of humility that wisdom is sought and found and acquired. So I guess there is a point maybe you could identify and acknowledge that you can come to a place where you have understanding, but that's not because you think it, it's because there's fruits to it. And when it comes to finding wise people in life, there are wise people. I know plenty of wise people. We've got a lot of wisdom in this church, as I said. There's a lot of wisdom here, but that wisdom, it's not by the way they dress or the way they talk, although those things, again, there could be, I guess, a result of wisdom, how to carry yourself, but it's the fruits of their life, the fruits of the things that they stand for, the things they say. And so there is wisdom to be found in others, and there is wisdom that can be identified, but it's not in their big words, it's in the fruits of their life, and we need to look for that. In fact, it says what it says here, let him show by his good behavior, his deeds, in the gentleness of wisdom or meekness of wisdom. And this idea of gentleness, again, I'm just going to go to what I think it's really trying to highlight here, the idea of humility from that place of, as opposed to, I think, some of the arrogance and proud ways that the wisdom of the world exerts itself, the way that it looks to itself. And we'll see this contrast. The way that the world looks to seek itself, and the gentleness of God, the wisdom of God is seeking the help of others. And so it's gentle, it's kind, it's giving, it's loving, it's humble. And so again, the words here, gentle or meek, but who's wise? There's evidence of their life. It's through, you see it through their good behavior, the deeds of the meekness of wisdom. And so there is evidence that can be seen when someone is wise. That type of wisdom, the wisdom that we are to put on, is not self-seeking. That's verse 14 talks about. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant or do not boast, and so lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom of God. This is not of God. The idea of bitter jealousy or rivalry, or the way it's looking to itself, as opposed, you might compare it to others, but yeah, you're looking at others, but not with the idea of how to help them, but how you stack up or how you compare. The wisdom of the world is looking to take advantage of others. It's looking to gain at maybe even the cost of others. It seeks its own glory is the idea. That idea of boasting is the idea. It's seeking its own glory. This is not the wisdom of God. If you have it, you may. We all have a little bit of it. I think that's the way the flesh works. It's why whenever we feel mistreated at work, why our initial reaction is how to get back at them. You know, there's a part of us that in this flesh that desires to be lifted up, to be preferred, to be bragged about, to be boasted about, to receive glory. And it seeks after its own. And whenever it feels mistreated, it looks to lash out and do the same to others. This is not of God. And the idea of, and so lie against the truth, it doesn't mean that in their arrogance or their boasting that they're lying. It's the idea that it's contrary. It's not of God. It's not true. It's warring against the truth of God. It's warring against what is right. When we seek our own, that part of us that looks to gain by way of getting ahead at the cost of others, or yeah, I can keep repeating myself, but I guess the point's been made. Comparing ourselves or preferring ourselves over others, thinking highly of ourselves. You're lying. It's not good. It's not something to boast of. It is not of God. This wisdom, verse 15, is not that which comes down from above. And like I said, I keep saying, this wisdom is not from above. Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, literally got it from God. He asked God for it. He pursued it. He desired it. God gave it. This type of wisdom that we see here is not of God, but is earthly, it's natural or sensual, and it's demonic. Some pretty strong words, but it's not of God. It's not of above. It's not from above. It's the earth. It's the wisdom of this earth, the wisdom of this flesh. It's the type of thinking of Satan. That's the idea here. It's not of heaven. It's not of God. It's of here. It's of us. It's of Satan. It's that same part of us that Satan tries to appeal to. It's what makes us so vulnerable to Satan and his temptations, because there's a part of us that does seek the things of Satan. We desire the things of this world. We desire the things of this flesh, but they're not of God. If we find ourselves looking for the things of this earth and gaining them, if we look to appeal to this flesh, this is not of God. It's demonic. It's not of God. It's of this flesh. It's of this, it's carnal. The idea of it being sensual, it's carnal. It's animal-like, it's not of God. It's of this earth. It's of this flesh, this tainted flesh. And again, it's of Satan himself. Satan was cast out of heaven for this type of thinking. It's exactly what came between him and God. We look at this, when we read about Satan, the idea that he lifted himself up above God. Now, there's, I guess, different types of thinking on this subject, but to think he more powerful than God, I have a hard time with that. but he preferred himself. He didn't want the things of God. He looked to lift himself up. That's the idea. He lifted himself up in his heart, in his desires. His thinking became self-seeking, not of God, but of himself. He was jealous of God. He is self-seeking. He is arrogant. He is proud. And this wars against the things of God, the wisdom of God. And so this is exactly what we're up against, wisdom of this earth, type of thinking of our flesh. But when we think of it that way, James kind of puts it in its place. We talk about this earth and its wisdom. I don't think we see it for its nastiness because it's so normal. We're so used to seeing it. We go to work and I don't know, there's a million different things that come to mind, as examples to this, but it's like one thing that bothers me. And I pointed out this before, salesmen, those that, a salesman that my company, they have this, we have the standard, and this idea that customer first. And I think to a degree, certainly that culture is in my company, but you'll also go through a training. I went through a training thing on my iPad a couple of weeks ago, and it's like about selling and how the cost of something really, it boils down to how much is something worth depends on how much they're willing to pay. It's like, that doesn't sound very fair to me. It's worth what it's worth. It should be a fair price. And if it's worth X, but they're willing to pay Y, you charge them Y. And that's what its worth is. It's how valuable it is to them. What are they willing to pay? That is its worth. And I guess there's a train of thought there that I understand, but it's not that's not the type of wisdom that God brings. That's the practical, earthly, natural, demonic type of wisdom that the earth preaches. And if we think about, these three words, earthly, carnal or sensual, our flesh, like the weakness of our flesh, and then demonic. What are the three things that war against God's people? The world wars against God's people, our flesh, and Satan. We have three great adversaries as God's people. These three things are the world, those that war against God, and again, our flesh, and Satan himself. And so when we look at this type of thinking, this type of wisdom that the world puts on, it has no part with God's people. It's like allowing these things into our life to be like the things that war against God. And that goes back to lying against the truth. And so let's keep reading here. Verse 16. For where jealousy and selfish ambition, it's the same words as back at 14, but if you have bitterness, bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, then he brings it up again in verse 16. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder, turmoil, and every evil thing. Again, it's the things of the earth. Where we have jealousy, where we have selfish ambition or rivalry, these things are not of God. These things are of the earth. They're of our flesh. They're sinful. They're demonic. There's where we have these things, and when we allow these things to our life, it doesn't give us joy. It doesn't give us peace. It doesn't work things out, especially not for God's people. When we allow these things to exist in our life, it brings turmoil. It doesn't bring out, things don't work out when you put on the thinking of the world. That's why they're not happy. There's turmoil there. There's disorder there. And that's where every evil deed begins, from this desire of seeking themselves. All evil deeds start with selfish ambition. It starts with self-seeking and trying to appeal to this flesh. So it's not of God. It's wars against God. It's by nature the things of Satan. So we need to put it off, this type of thinking. But the wisdom of God, and we're getting back to the wisdom that we're to put on, that's the wisdom of the world. And that's what they teach and they stand for, and they don't shy away from it. They're not even embarrassed of it. You guys ever see that clip of that guy who's like a what do they call it? Motivational speaker. And he has the lady stand on the first step of the ladder. And he's like, all right, now fall, I'll catch you. And as soon as she starts falling, he turns to the crowd and says, lesson number one, never trust anybody. And the lady falls back and gets knocked out. I mean, and they had to bring up security and remove the guy from the stage. It's a horrible clip, but I guess the only thing that I'm cracking up about is the ignorance, the stupidity of this guy. But this is a practical teaching. I've heard it many times. You've heard it many times. this idea of, don't allow yourself to basically be taken advantage of, or always look for yourself. Don't let others take advantage of you. And I guess the idea is don't trust anybody. You put your life in someone else's hands, they're going to mistreat you. I guess, I understand there's maybe some level of truth to that, being careful about, we could probably spin it to be a godly thing, not allowing the world to mold and shape us. But, at the end of the day, as God's people, we are open to being, having our lives taken advantage of. We don't know that when someone has their hand out, whether they are being honest or not, but we as God's people need to be loving and compassionate, not always looking, not being worried about having someone take advantage of us. The wisdom of the world, that's their wisdom. They'll conduct themselves that way, but that's not how we are. As it says, it's not of us. It's not of God. It's not from above. It's the things of Satan. But going back to his wisdom, but the wisdom from above is first pure. And we're going to, the idea of being chaste or good or clean. It's peaceable. We're going to close out tonight on the idea of peacemaking or being peaceable, but it pursues peace. It wants things worked out. It's not looking for putting someone in its place. It's not looking to take advantage. It's not looking to harm. It wants to work things out. It's good. The wisdom of God, it wants peace. It wants to work things out with people. It wants peace in life. It wants peace with others. It doesn't want that turmoil from verse 16 or the disorder and the evil from verse 16. It wants pure things, good things, peaceable things. It goes back, it's gentle. It's a different word than I was going to use. It's gentle. It's reasonable, or the idea of reasonable. I think a better word would be obedient. The idea of it complies, right? It's reasonable, but it complies. It's obedient, and not just by way of authority, but just in life. It's reasonable. It works things out. It's obedient. It follows instruction. It's full of mercy, and we talked about that. What was that? Oh, was that the kids' class? I don't know. I talked about mercy just recently. Like I said, my brain is fried. My brain is flies. My brain is fried. It's full of mercy. It's good. It's merciful. It's forgiving. Again, it goes back to all these thoughts of being pure and peaceable and gentle and obedient. It wants mercy. It has it has good fruits. Like I said, you'll know a tree by its fruits. You'll know wisdom by its fruits, but it doesn't produce bad fruits. The wisdom of God produces goodness, good fruits, unwavering. I think the idea there is more in regard to being impartial. And I think King James even says that, right? Which I think is a better translation. It's impartial, doesn't matter. It's not just about race or age. It's just in general, it doesn't prefer. It just is good and it's impartial. Whether, again, I guess we could apply it to nationality and race and gender and all that stuff, but just in general, the wisdom of God, it's impartial when we're exercising. It's when we're utilizing the wisdom of God. It's without hypocrisy. It's not fake. I guess in conjunction, hypocrisy is fake, but also has a way of pointing at others, lifting itself up. Hypocrisy, trying to build up this image of something great and not really living up to it. The wisdom of God is quite opposite of that. And the hypocrisy of the world wants to point and look at others, but the wisdom of God causes us to look inward. And instead of trying to present something to the world, we're more working on our inner man, bettering ourselves, and not so much trying to puff ourselves up and lift ourselves up and be something in the eyes of others. So again, the wisdom that we just read, all these words, and we could go on. I'm sure James could have gone on and used many words to describe the wisdom of God, but we see how opposite, that's the idea of how opposite this is than the self-seeking wisdom of the world. It's opposite. It's opposite way of thinking. And, and we wonder why there's so many people in this world that everything that they would say is yes, we would say is no. And everything that we would say is no, they would say is yes. And It's just they're backwards on everything. But again, that's what happens when you put on the thinking of the world. It's opposite. It's at war. It's a lie. It's at war with the things of God. And as we read one being about me, and we read about all these other things in verse 17, it's about others, about being good and preferring others, being humble, loving others, and kind. I love verse 18. The seed of those fruit, and the seed of whose fruit is righteousness, is sown in peace by those who make peace, by peacemakers. The fruits of righteousness are sown by those who make peace. It's sown in peace. And, sometimes that idea of end justifies the means. No, I think the Bible talks, it does matter how we go about things. Just getting to a good outcome isn't enough. It does matter how we go about doing things. We need to do things in a peaceable way, in a way that's pursuing peace, in a way that makes peace. And I can't imagine too many greater things said about a human being, compliment, than being a peacemaker. So what a good thing to be someone who brings peace, who makes peace with others and makes peace between others, and just has a way of helping things work out and things be unified. We know the importance of unity, and it's a necessity as God's people that we are one as a people, that we are one as a church, that we are one with God. And that goes, it just sings to the importance of having, being a peacemaker and having peacemakers in your church, being a people who are pursuing peace, going about things in a way that is peaceable. And as it says, the fruits of righteousness, we see the word fruits being mentioned a couple times here in this paragraph. The fruits of righteousness, the fruits of goodness, of rightness, is sown in peace, and it's sown by peacemakers. And we need to be a people who are looking to be peacemakers and good in that regard. And in closing, and speaking of being a peacemaker, I have no clue why we're turning. I have no clue why I wrote this verse down to close with, because it has nothing to do with the lesson. It just came to mind at the end, and that was just the brain I'm working with. But as Christ is preaching on the Sermon on the Mount, and blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And I do think the wisdom of God is about peace and goodness and rightness with others, and preferring others, loving others, lifting others up. And that part of us that wants to do the other, that inkling that we have, is not of God. And we have to be reminded of that from time to time, because we justify our actions. We get upset with people, and we justify why we're angry, or why we said this, or why we did that. The wisdom of God does not produce this type of thinking. It's opposite. It's a lie. The wisdom of God is very much the opposite of that. It desires good and right and peace. And as God's people, I hope that we're pursuing that, generally and specifically, looking at our days, at ways that we can, do right by others and put on the wisdom of God. And then I guess I start off by saying, when we feel that inkling start to creep in, get rid of it, put it off. It's not of God. And that idea of seeking its own, seeking ourselves, lifting ourselves up, it's not of God. It's of the world, it's of our flesh, and it's demonic. Let's go ahead and stand. And at one last time, ask if there's any prayer requests. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good week. We'll just keep praying for those that are recovering and having health issues. Quite a few that are struggling with some type of health issue. So we'll just be in prayer for them. Hope everyone has a good week. Pray for those that have been missing lately, that we see them on Sunday, and I'll see you all then. Let's go ahead and dismiss. Triva, will you dismiss us in prayer, please?
Light to our lives and our lives to your service to the world. God, our sins, our shortcomings, Lord. We lift up the prayer request. We just ask you that it would happen. To accept your will. Just ask you guys to name the week, Lord, just want to reach everyone. Gracious, that's me.
Amen.
Amen.